Alright, time to get started. Hey guys, what's up? My name is Richard, I go by Kirby Kid, and welcome to DL Live. This is a daily stream in which we talk about game design topics, and because we do one a day, I can pretty much talk about whatever I want, and you're bound to get some kind of variety throughout the week. DL is a channel, we have a Discord, we have a Twitter, and we talk about game design. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, just find the Twitter and you'll find the Discord. We also have a YouTube channel, so all of these videos will be posted there shortly after. And I'll give you a random fact of the day, something about design or about me. So, blah, blah, blah. Here's a random fact. I have a public spreadsheet of all the games that I've ever played, and I keep track of so many stats about these games, so I'm going to give you a sneak peek of what that looks like right here. Right here. Hey, yeah, so this is a spreadsheet. I can drop the link down in the description below, but essentially, let's see, let me drag this out a little bit. Essentially, every game that I've ever played is on this left part of the column. You can't see very well for some reason, so let me just insert one left. There we go. Now you can see it a little better. Every game I've ever played in the list, I keep track of things like the genre and whether I beat it, how many hours I played, if I can actually remember, or if the system actually keeps track of it, how much I paid for it, and all these other crazy stats. Keeping track of things that you think about game design is a really good way to just sort of keep tabs on yourself so that your own opinion and your own taste and your own values are more accurately reflective of you, and you can kind of see what areas you're weak or areas that you have particular interests. I also keep the tabs down here of running design issues that I have with certain aspects of the game, and as you know, the DO entire DO family is color coded, so everything here is color coded as well. Red for enemy design, deep purple for design space, light purple for feedback, systems roles, everything else. You should know the colors by now. If you don't, there's some more links on our main website, which I will link below as well. But essentially, keeping tracks of things that you don't like and what games do it not so well, and maybe consider the pros of why somebody would implement that particular design element, and then also consider the drawbacks. So, you know, talking about game design isn't always about things that you hate. It's about considering what it's good for as well as what it does bad, because everything's a trade-off, and figuring out how to balance out whatever project you're working on, you must also consider the pros and cons. So I've been keeping a running list. The design issues are up to 172 different items. Design awards are the opposite, like games I really feel like exemplify a particular aspect, whether it's, you know, a mode or a feature, like action features in turn-based RPGs type games. I got a few examples there. Whether it's like something simple like a health bar, and I create a criteria of all the things I think make good health bars, and I try to keep track of the games I think do a really good job of it, and that's why all this list goes down and down. But one of the interesting things I want to talk about, where is it? Right here, number 24, is horde modes. And horde modes are really interesting. They started coming around around the time of, I think, Gears of War, at least on the console days, and they kind of pioneered-ish what the horde mode is. So, you know, it's typically a multiplayer experience in which waves of enemies come at you and you're in some kind of shooting environment. It can have slight elements of tower defense. It can have elements of just sort of straight up shooting, first person, third person shooting action, but typically they create scenarios out of the waves that are coming at you, and you have limited resources to deal with them, and I really do like horde modes a lot. I think horde modes in general, when done well, are better than pretty much all the single player gameplay out of all these shooters. So it's like a really concentrated gameplay scenarios that are highly repeatable and also multiplayer, without all the sort of story elements and downtime that you get in a lot of first person shooters nowadays. So topping my list is Splatoon 2. They have Salmon Run, and this is my favorite horde mode of all time, but other good examples are Resident Evil 4 with Mercenaries, 5 with Co-op Mercenaries, Halo Reach has a great firefight / horde mode, Metroid Blast from Nintendo Land's actually a pretty good horde mode, Call of Duty with their zombies, God of Protectors for the 3DS, and I think used to be for the 360 is a pretty good one, Assault Android Cactus, blah blah. So essentially, I wanted to answer a few questions that were left by people on the DO Discord or the Twitter before we jump into a few other things. Oh, my hats. You can actually see my hats in the background. There we go. And these. Might as well move those over. So let's click over to these questions and I'll tackle them one by one. What's the best way to do it? I think I'll just read them out loud, but otherwise you could see here. Like one of our friends, Nathan, asked, what context do you think the variation on ground heights are useful in a platformer? And that came from a comment that I made looking at Zera's levels on the previous episodes, where he had some uneven ground in some of his Super Mario Maker levels, and I just didn't like the fact that the ground was one brick high in random places and it made these weird little bumps and undulations. So I was like, take those out. Mario's gameplay is based on the flat ground, and you should probably take those out and focus on things that are floating in the air and getting Mario to elevate for most of his challenge. So Nathan asked a question like, is there any good reason to have a ground that's like one brick high like that? And really, if you look at what a lot of the new Super Mario Brothers games do with playing around with how the ground is presented, they either have Super Mario Bros. 3 introduced a 45-degree slope, but these games introduce these like large rotating hills, rolling hills, and other sort of really large platform structures, whether they're like large platforms that tilt up and down like this, or a teeter-totter, or whatever. And if you want to make slight changes, it's so much cleaner to do a ramp or a hill or like an angle that actually has physics on it than just a one brick high undulation like that. So whatever good you want to get out of it, there are probably better ways to do it. And once you start utilizing some of these new level elements, you'll probably have a much clearer idea of how to implement them into any kind of platformer level design better. Why do you rank Super Mario World lower than even Super Mario Brothers? That's because Super Mario Brothers is amazing, and Super Mario World is less thrilling for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of cool things to like about Super Mario World. It's in general very cool. It's got the cape, which is kind of broken. It's got a new style of sort of exploration and finding exits, was kind of a neat twist. It had a new overworld style that I loved as a kid, and I still think it's really neat. But ultimately, the level design, especially coming off of Super Mario Bros. 3, which is still like the best, ridiculous. The level design in the world was definitely a step down, and it had a lot more open space and played around with a lot more sort of ideas that were less layered and less interesting and undermined more by the flying than I would like. So across the entire game, I felt like its level design was too weak. So I put it even below the original Mario Brothers. I've not played the Klonoa series. What kind of platformers do you see in the future? So that's a pretty interesting question. I think I can answer some of these other ones first, though. What do you, I guess you could mention some of my favorite levels in each platformer. So we can go over to my list. I even keep a track of my favorite games organized by genre and by series. And if your series has 3 or more games and I've played them, I go ahead and put them on the list. So, you know, those are all the series. You can check these out on your own time, but we can take a peek at 2D Mario's, you know, Bros 3, Yoshi's Island, New Super Mario Bros. 2, U, Wii, Run. Super Mario Run's fantastic. That's why it gets so much higher on the list than these others, including New Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros., Luigi U, World, Lost Levels 2, Land. Yeah, Bros 3, just about every level is amazing, but some of my standout favorites are like the half water levels that have the rising and lowering. Some of their cool, more gimmicky levels, like the one where you're trapped in the castle and you got to keep looping through it till you get a power up to escape. And as much as I hate them, the last levels in Bros 3 are really hard and challenging, but they're still really interesting and neat. New Super Mario Bros. 2, my favorite levels are, I think I like almost all the DLC levels. Like, I love them a lot, including the Nerve Rack pack and the Impossible pack. And even the Gold Rush pack, I thought it was a really good set of 3 levels, specifically designed to give you a lot of coins and stuff like that. So I don't want to talk too much because I don't really have examples of all these. But New Super Mario Brothers DS, there's a particular level, I think I've written about it on my blog, and if I find that, I'll link it below. But there's a level that I played I think literally for like an hour straight, just over and over playing the level, and then for total I played it for like 3 or 5 hours alone, just because it had so many interesting things to do, with bullet bills and suspension and picking up bomb mobs and throwing them around and doing all this cool stuff. So I played that a lot, and I don't remember the number. It's like 611 or something like that, or 67 or 75. But you know, it's kind of harder to remember the names when they don't have titles. And I'm sure I could think about levels from each of those, but I just don't want to take the time right now. At what point do you feel using... Oops, here's my chat. Yeah, Mario Maker doesn't have any ramps at all. At what point do you feel like using the easiest option in a single-player game, where players are just hugging the skill floor, when that actually becomes a problem? I'm pretty sure that's what Nate Stein is asking here. But this is kind of a general issue that you do with art in general. Like, okay, you can make your movie as deep as you want, and you can make it have so many subtle pieces of imagery and motifs and themes and all that, but ultimately your movie still has to work as a basic piece of storytelling, a basic plot that people can follow. And if you kind of understand how people learn, people build on top of simpler things that they understand. So it's not that smart people just instantly jump to the deep stuff, and people who aren't quite on it are just hanging out in the shallow end all the time. It's everyone's constantly building on the lower elements, and the quote-unquote people who get it just build faster or are more willing to put in the time to get that information and knowledge. So it's not that we have to resent the skill floor in games. It's pretty much that you need to make sure your skill floor is interesting, and that is the foundation of what your game is. So in Mario's case, you know, you can beat the whole game without taking damage. You can beat the whole game as small Mario for the most part. Like, that's pretty consistent across almost every game. You can beat the game without using the run button, and all these little things, like the actual minimum things you have to do to beat Mario, is very well tuned and still very fun. So no matter if you want to take it slow or do anything else more skillful, like finding all the secrets, holding the run button all the time, or doing anything else that's crazy, speed running, if you will, those possibilities are open to you, and it's probably because the skill floor or the low level play is so robust that you can have more fun doing those more complex things. Because some games just fall apart when you put pressure on them, just to be honest. So let's see. And that kind of goes into this question, what kind of platformers do I want to see in the future? You know, a lot of platformers, there hasn't really been a lot of platformers recently. So like, if you want to count things like Shovel Knight, that's kind of a new IP riffing off of old design styles. You can talk about things like Meat Boy, which is still, it's old now, and you can talk about stuff like N++, but other than that, you know, we've had Rayman's, Mario's, Sonic's for a long time, and they each have their own style. Does anyone not hold the run button all the time? Yeah, a lot of players, actually. And I used to think holding the run button all the time in Mario was the best way to play, but actually it's not. You know, it's just, you have to have various degrees of control, and using the right speed for the right moment is just as important as being able to go fast and survive, but that's another topic. So, what is it? So the kinds of things that I want to see in the future are probably games that have just brand new ideas of what to do with their level design. Mario's pretty much nailed the counterpoint style level design. If you don't know what that means, you know, I wrote all about it on my blog, and I got the links down below if I remember to put them in, so you don't have to worry too much about that. But Mario has his own style, Sonic has his own style. They played around with it a lot across the years. There's mini games in each series. But I kind of want to see something new from a new IP that's doing new things and not trying to follow in the same path as Mario. Because Donkey Kong Country Returns is pretty much in the same path as Mario now. Even though they have their barrel / minecart missions that are pretty much on rails, and they have their time trials. You know, the platforming challenges are, you know, left to right, don't really do so much with layers, but they have their like secret areas, and they have their collectibles, and they have their combat, and that's pretty much cut out of the same vein that Mario sort of established.
So I want to see some new things, and I think there's a lot of potential with 3D platformers. Actually, the game that we talked about on Design Oriented called Flatpak, which was an iOS game. Let me see if I can find a picture of it. Hold on, guys. Everything can't not have a picture of Flatpak. We actually did a discussion on this game. Flatpak game. Here we go. Let me drag this in here. Yeah, Flatpak. This game with this little guy with the hat, and it's on iOS, and he's actually platforming and moving around these three-dimensional cubes as you rotate across their faces. Super clever. The game had a few issues here and there, but as far as the kind of stuff I want to see in the future, it's stuff like this. Inspired by new ideas and taking it onto new platforms, maybe with new controls, and kind of running from there. So more games like that I think are really cool. I don't even need these headphones. I want to see more like that. I think 3D platformers have a lot they can do, and conquering 3D alone is incredibly difficult. That's why most game companies don't do it. They don't even bother, but Mario's still trucking along, so that's pretty cool. And I have a lot of ideas on how to fix the whole bad 3D problem, and how to actually accurately jump to and land and maneuver around objects that are in 3D space when you don't have a really clear way of judging their position. So that's more where I'm leaning in the future, and we'll see what happens. So all this kind of transitions into what I want to talk about for today's episode. When we're talking about platformers, they're really a real simple style of action game where for the most part you're not like attacking things, and you're not shooting things, and you're not doing all these other kind of crazy actions. For the most part, a platformer is just you see a thing coming at you, you jump around it or over it or slide under it, and that makes up the vast majority of its interactivity. So thinking about that, platformers have a lot in common with so many other genres. Even though other genres had other mechanics, like I mentioned in other actions, the core of all these games is really your ability to move through space. So that's something I kind of want to touch on. We can address some of these other comments later, especially how other aims combat uses space and doesn't use space. That's a whole other topic for another day. But we'll flick back over here, and I'll show you what I mean. So this is Splatoon 2. And as far as platforming goes, this game doesn't look like it has a lot to it. By the way, check out my fly clothes. Look how fly that is. I'll show you in the menu. Check this out. Click A. This freaking white hard hat with these sweet protective eyewear. And then check out this shirt. Oop, no. Nice like ink drop pattern shirt with a gray that matches. Alright. And then these shoes. Freaking hot pink, whatever shoes these are. And then when I couple it with the mini splat lane, look how cool this looks. Pink, purple is amazing. And my eyes are pink. So that's cool. So when we're talking about Splatoon, it's a game that really does cool things with movement. But if you look at the jump, like this jump, I think is about 2 times the height of the character. Let's look at this character right here. So my feet barely clear this like girl. Talking about Bepsi. So it's not really much of a jump. Mario pretty much clears his height by like 4 or 5 times, and this is like stinky compared to Mario, right? However, one thing that's important to know that is when you're designing around space, everything is a lot more straightforward because it's just like hitboxes and characters moving through a space, and it doesn't have to look too fancy or have all these special effects in order to make that particularly interesting. So let's go to this one. So something I've been thinking about recently is how space and all action games are really primarily about positioning your character or your obstacle, your object, or whatever, however you're playing through space. What Splatoon does is really cool is you paint the ground and it allows you to move through it more quickly. And it also applies to a lot of different walls and vertical surfaces. So like that, you paint the side, you can go up here, stand on top, but you can't go up here because it's not painted. You can kind of struggle against it if you want and barely get up. So, as you can see from my mini splatling, the ink pattern is not a solid mass of ink. It splatters more quickly, more solidly at your feet, and depending on how you aim and how you move, these little dots pepper the environment. And one interesting thing about Splatoon is this very basic idea of being able to transform the environment from something that's two different types of locomotion is so dynamic and like so effective that you as a designer, you want to build your action gameplay and your combat on top of this. So you never want to undermine this what I'm doing right here, this basic traversal. Even though the jump is teeny, if you look at the height of different things, even though that's an enemy brick, you have just enough height to jump over a lot of obstacles like this. And all you need to do is make sure that when you're designing your games, you tune everything around what you have instead of chasing some arbitrary or some stylistic goal. And everything can serve a basic function so that what you build and put into your game doesn't sort of crowd each other and then actually reduce its effectiveness. So you'd be surprised, Splatoon, how much these tiny little differences in the ink pattern make a big difference when you're pressured, right? The difference between basically having, like this doesn't really make a difference to whether or not this is completely filled in or not. As you can see, I can glide right over it. But the fact this gap is a big difference. If you get out of the ink, not only are you slower for this little bit of time, but you're slightly more exposed because your model like that pops out. And then imagine if there's your ink like that. If you want to get quickly from point A to point B, you probably have to pick either this path and go around like that, or this path, or potentially jump this gap so it doesn't slow you down too much. Because even though it doesn't look like I'm not slowing down a lot when I go outside of the ink, when it's enemy ink, you almost stop dead cold, and I can't really simulate that right here, but it's just something to keep in mind. So with very little complexity, you have the ability to both make everything that you do as far as aiming and shooting matter, and because the ink stays on the ground, what you shoot there will stay there until somebody else messes it up, so all your actions sort of have a little bit of permanence. And then all these tiny little differences start to matter as more and more pressure gets put on you. So I'm going to get out of this recon mode and show you what I mean. Quit recon. So the theory is every action game needs to be built around certain principles, certain kind of ideas that allow you to move first and then do the thing second. And the reason why that's so important is if you have the freedom to move and position yourself accordingly relative to obstacles in the environment or your enemies, then you also have the ability to, do that secondary action in a bunch of different contexts and a bunch of different variety. If you only have one option to do your action, then your game is a lot more straightforward and a lot more, it doesn't have as much emergent complexity as you might think. So let's take a look at some of these moments here. Playing Grizzco. I call it Grizzco's Salmon Run. Grizzco sounds cooler. And then I die. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. You can see in this video right here, I'm killing things from afar, and then right here, oop, that's not the pause button. There we go. So right here, no, I don't want to delete it either. Pause button, okay. The area across the screen is, can I even see that? Is orange, so I know near the basket it's clean, but there's green in front of it. So this Hydra is a really slow firing weapon. It takes a lot of time to rev up, and then the ink it shoots is not exactly solid. So moving around with this thing when you're in enemy territory is incredibly risky. So right here, I'm stuck in the ink just because I stepped just a little bit in enemy ink. That's a bad thing. So now I'm incredibly slow. And I go ahead and grab an egg, pick the right path, and go around the enemy circle. But then right here is an explosion, which I paused perfectly. And I barely cut left to reduce the damage that I take. But now this entire area is enemy ink. And I'm about to get attacked by a maul from below. So I immediately shoot the ground enough to swim away, put the egg in, and return to the scene of the crime. Again, my ink is in a little ring, but I have to avoid this middle green area. So I actually jump it just like I described before. And that allows me to get another egg in the basket, and then another egg. Rain's coming in from the left, so this whole area is about to turn green. And then I see the steel eel on my right, a long snake-like enemy coming in, so I have to bail. And since I already traveled through this area, I know some of it's got to be orange, but it's not a lot. So I shoot the ground again and leap to this tiny patch that was left orange just because of the way the enemies move naturally. They don't, cut corners that sharp. So this tiny little part I'm standing on is the only safe space in all this enemy ink, and I'm surrounded by both sides from enemies. So I charge and I shoot the tail here and finish it off barely before I get attacked from below and on the top and on the left, basically. Jump out of that and then get killed. So as you can see it all again in real time, every shot matters, every bit of ink matters, every path the enemy moves in matters because it turns it from your color to their color. Every tiny little patch matters, every little bit you swim matters. And not a lot of people think about depth in this particular way. They have too many bad habits of making metaphors to chess or talking about, move complexity or combos and fighting games or whatever. But this is one of the best ways to think about depth across, many different types of video games or just about any art form. When you're talking about depth, what it really means is how much does the stuff that happens matter? Like, how much does every word on the page matter? And how much does every action you take matter? There's other elements to bringing out what matters, like, is it clear? Is it presented well? Is it, feasibly, humanly possible to interact in certain ways? Like, those are all side considerations. But for the most part, we're thinking, do my actions moment to moment like terminate, like I killed an enemy, that's all that matters, or does how I kill the enemy matter? If I missed 4 out of the 5 shots and I still kill the enemy within time, is that a good thing, or did that stray shot actually will that stray shot actually come into play somewhere down the line for whatever reason? In this case, just looking at the ink, it's a really clear way to see what happens and what matters in the battlefield. And when things get pressured like this, the tiny ink spots here matter. An enemy walked this long green strip on the top part. That means an enemy traveled that way, and that mattered because nobody cleaned it up. And when nobody cleans it up, it's harder for people to get back over that area to fight. So that means all the enemies are probably going to be sweeping closer this way. And you can see it as plain as day with the contrast with the colors. But we'll look at another example to see what happens. Again, things are looking pretty dire out there. I'm being pinned down by a laser. 2 lasers, barely get out. Throw a bomb out the window. Let's paint my feet again. Throw a bomb ahead of time so I can get that last egg into the basket. So I'll slow it down again. Getting eggs into the basket is the whole point of this game. This whole mode, and every wave you have to get a certain amount. You can see in the top left it says 17 out of 20. So we need to, as a team, need to get 3 more eggs in. So I tried to grab that egg and I got bumped. And these tiny little dots that are appearing on the ground mean that missiles are about to rain in. So I know this whole area is going to be dangerous. So I grab an egg, jump over the green patch, or I shoot down into the green patch. Let me say that. 1 blotch of ink, and then I quickly swim out of it before I get crushed against the wall. Shoot another blotch of ink, travel diagonally because I see a path like, oh, I gotta obviously travel where my ink is, and I'm almost surrounded entirely by green ink. But then there's rain coming in from the left, and that rain's about to, wash over this patch with the green ink. So I quickly tap it and then jump out. And as you can see here, it's kind of hard to move around when you have these lasers shooting you from across the screen. But they track you slowly. So I cut back across the laser just briefly, jump, and then cut back down across it before I die. And even as the laser chases me, right here, I throw a bomb near the basket because bombs have a delayed explosion. I know it's going to be clean, you know, in a few seconds from now. Throw the bomb, shoot my feet, cleaned up the ink right in front of the basket, which is what I needed to barely get the egg in time. So that's just another cool example of how you can see what is happening just based on the colors. Even though there's a lot going on, don't worry about this. This is one of the hardest levels of difficulty for this mode, but just showing you that readability and the fact that every piece of ink you see here was put down either by a player if it's orange or by an enemy if it's green, because this whole area starts off blank and neutral. So that's cool too. And me with the Hydra stupid splatling again. This weapon's so hard to use sometimes. So this weapon's hard to use because it has such a slow rev, but once you rev it up all the way, you get quite a long clip. Oh, that was so close. Gee. Okay, we'll watch it again. So this weapon's a slow firing weapon, and it's hard to paint your own path when you're in enemy territory because it's slow to fire, and it's hard to move in general because he's slow to walk as well. So after I put this egg in, I know I have to take out this enemy because this weapon has great range. Little dudes are coming in, but I know based on the timing of the situation, I have just enough time to kill the guy. Just enough time, and then the dudes are attacking. So I back out, throw a bomb left, and then leap towards my safe area. Good thing I have a roller friend. This guy's blocking the doorway, and when this guy blocks the doorway, he like shoots his own ink behind him. So it's kind of dangerous, not to mention the fact that there's fat enemies, Cohawks, like coming in the doorway. And this could really be a bad bottleneck choke point for any team when you make these guys stop in your doorway. So what I do is I look up, paint the wall, swim up the wall because of the verticality in Splatoon, swoop around the corner, and I see this fat guy. He's looking at me with his stupid sharp teeth. Throw a bomb straight down, shoot the ground, do that leap strategy. That little fish on the left hit me with the frying pan, which actually knocked me out of the danger zone because of momentum. I fly to the side, they die. Try to kill this guy, barely get my own ink there to swim, jump away from that guy's stupid frying pan attack. So every inch mattered right there. Even getting hit mattered, kept me safe. Even though getting hit is never that good of a thing, it kept me safe. And then I go back in, my friends clear the way, and that's a wrap. So in a lot of these situations, it's not just the fact that I have a gun, and it's not just the fact that we're playing a shooter. It's just really cool examples of how you can see that space matters, both up walls and across lanes and raining down and throwing bombs out the window and rolling things along the ground. Every bit of space matters, but it's all done with mechanics and moves that are really simple in and of themselves. Like each piece is simple. Mario's jump is simple. Mario's duck is simple. Mario's fire flower or fireballs are simple, but you put them all together and you're doing them all simultaneously, and you get all these interesting new timing and spatially unique challenges. And you can see that happening a lot right here in Splatoon. Oh, those are my fly clothes. I took a picture of it because they're so fly. So now our team is purple. So this gun, quote unquote, is actually a brush. It's an ink brush, and it's really weak. But the best part about it is it moves around very quickly. So you can just run through enemy ink if you have it up like this, and even run past enemies. So this is showcasing a little bit of the weapon diversity in Splatoon. So we'll pause at the beginning. This is my brother, Marcus. He's dead. So we quickly revive him while missiles are dropping in from the top. And you can always hear the missiles. It's that sound effect. You can almost always see a target coming at you. So everything in this game is so cool. Is telegraphed. So nothing is like a complete surprise. Once you get used to the basic enemy types and enemy rules, you're like, okay, nothing's going to jump out of a closet and kill you with one hit. Everything's, all the enemies move slow. All their tracking AI is fairly straightforward. and all their attacks have these long windups, and yet this is super intense. Meaning orange sherbet. So good. So right here, my friend Breach, I think he explodes. Let's see, on the map, the little Luna Blaster just exploded. So unimpeded, I get to run past this danger zone right here, but I see that these gigantic steel heads, these large slug-like creatures on the right with bombs for their head, I can see them looking at me, and I see this other fish looking at me, so I know they're tracking me. Very clear feedback as far as that goes. And I'm like, okay, well, if you're looking at me, I'm going to draw your fire away from my friends. So I use the mobility of the ink rush, stand right here and try to get as much damage as possible. It's not a lot of damage because this gun is so weak. This brush is so weak. But I see Marcus. Marcus has the Rapid Blaster Pro. He starts shooting the steelhead, so I know this whole right side is going to be taken care of. So I pop my special, which gives me unlimited bombs for a little bit of time, and I try to throw them into the baskets. Take a little look at that again. These triangle-like objects are bombs, and if you get them inside of these missile-launching, Rubbermaid containers, it's hard to see missiles on the grade. But if you land a bomb inside of them, these fly fish enemies explode, and that's the only way you can take them out unless you have some other kind of super powerful attack. So right now, I have unlimited bombs for a few seconds, and I'm aiming very carefully to try to get 4 bombs in these 4 buckets. It's just like playing basketball. You see one going in there, you see one going in there, you see the one going in there. But aiming, there's so many different kinds of aiming, and I think, you know, shooters have been doing this for a long time, but grenades are so awesome. Like the fact that they arc and your bullets are straight, it's just such a brilliant contrast with, okay, like I'm trying to line everything up with direct line of sight, but with grenades it's the opposite. I'm trying to arc things over walls where I can't get. I'm trying to throw them ahead of time so that when they explode I can, you know, do a pinch attack where it's attacking one direction, I cover the other direction. Like there's so many things you can do with a delayed attack in a shooting game like this, but the grenades are just a perfect example of showing why that's the case. So I blew up this guy's baskets, and he falls down and makes the whole area my color, which is great. But on the guy on the right, you can see I didn't kill him. So I brush, and then I realize I have 7 seconds to get this egg back into the basket. So with the unimpeded brush movement, I worm my way through the chaos and barely get the egg in time. But what's interesting is, in order to get these enemies not to hold me up, they can't be in this tiny little gap that you see me run through up ahead. So in order to prevent the enemy AI from blocking it, I actually do these weird snaking patterns where I bump him, and then because they were slightly distracted and tried to hit me with their stupid frying pans, that they weren't able to block it, and then I would weasel my way into the steelhead, or past the steelheads, barely dodge the explosion. I took some damage and then get the egg in. So what makes the game complex is how everything is put together. What makes the game deep is that everything matters. But a lot of times people don't think to describe what's happening in these games as deep, because it's a whole bunch of small, easy to understand interactions that fly by at like super fast pace. So the very fact that I did a slight S pattern, worming my way past the enemies right there, is a big difference between doing that and just trying to go straight towards the goal. If you go straight, you'll probably get held up and die. But if you do this tiniest little jukes, every little movement matters, every timing different matters when you play tighter and tighter, or when the enemies push you to play tighter. That's kind of a thing that's incredibly understated with games. And a lot of people like to talk about, you know, complex systems and rules and weakness resistance and items and loot drops and their builds and stuff, but all that is a much less effective type of complexity for building depth. And you can see so many examples here in Splatoon. Jumped over the ink right there. Helped kill that guy. Tried to get one in the basket. Missed. Oop. My computer went to sleep. I wish it wouldn't do that. Okay, let's back up a little bit. Put the egg in. Go back out. See the fly fish. We all throw bombs in, shoot up the wall. My same wall trick, but now I'm double surrounded and I die. So not everything works out, obviously, in Splatoon, but it's cool that all my teammates were here. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's Marcus down there, Adrian, and Breach. We're all members of DO. And we all decided to throw in bombs, but then right in my view, I see the snake. I'm like, oh no, he actually hits me. So I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I should have just went into this window and gone inside of this building structure, but I thought it'd be cute and do my drop strategy. But then I didn't realize there was 3 eels over here, and they were constricting me like a boa constrictor. And I just get wrapped up and squeezed. That's alright. So that's the cool thing about the missiles that come in. They home directly on you. They give you a warning. And even though you think, oh, it's so easy to dodge, 1, you won't dodge them all. You'll explode. 2, where you decide to juke affects where you're able to move afterwards. So like as you can see here, everything is orange. Like everything is orange. Oop. Everything's orange. Yay, orange. And all of a sudden, a couple of missiles, and now almost everything is green. And I'm having a hard time moving. And there's still more green. I barely jump over that one. I'm like, oh, so it's not just a matter of surviving any individual hit. Like, look at all those missiles! Look at all these missiles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 missiles chasing me, and now the whole area is green, so I just gotta get out of here. So I gotta stop these guys from shooting missiles. I just want you guys to see that amazing shot. So, never forget, aim is amazing. And when you aim, you put spatial objects in your game, and you make it matter whether you get close or not, whether you throw something, you have a short range or a long range. You get amazing stuff like this happening. I throw the first bomb in, explodes, knocks this stupid Rubbermaid thing right into the ocean. But then the second one, this is a near impossible angle to hit. And I knew if I threw it straight at the thing, I'd probably miss. So I aim at the top flap like a frickin' Tim Duncan basketball player, banking it off the backboard, and it barely tumbles in with its weird triangle physics. Frickin' taunt, take my eggs. Man, that is so like, you'd be so surprised at how fun it is to dunk on those stupid fly fish. Like sometimes you jump off of platforms and basically hand deliver a grenade for a dunk. Sometimes you toss it in over the backboard or a bank shot like that. And sometimes you just nail it from all the way across the stage just because you barely see him out of the corner of your eye. Like all those interactions are amazing, but it's super straightforward. It's basketball. Like there's nothing too complex about throwing something and trying to land it in a small area, but it's what action is made out of. It not only stresses your positioning before you throw the grenade, but it stresses so many other dynamics like how the object arcs, what the hole looks like. I can't tell you how many times I've thrown bombs into that stupid fly fish and it would hit the rim and then like tumble out because the bomb is basically a equilateral triangular pyramid. Something like that. I can't tell you how many times I freaking missed. Oh, that was just stomping on these guys. This is some multiplayer. Not exactly the horde mode that I wanted to highlight, but shows me using this. Why am I doing this? Why did I save this video? It's kind of cool how you can see the missiles happening in multiplayer though and how different it looks. In multiplayer you try to make the entire side your color and push your control onto the enemies. Oh, that was super cool. That's why I saved it. Okay, so like I'm chasing this guy, snipe him. I hear with my ears somebody shooting a jetpack at me, so I spin around and get around this edge right before this orange explosion tries to kill me. So I throw a bomb in that direction. He shoots the freaking sponge to try to expose my cover, but I threw the bomb early, and then it makes it big again, takes the next hit, and then I shoot it again, and then he just can't get me. I'm like, oh, it's so cool. Just playing around this freaking sponge. And like the interactions with all these items, so simple. Just it's a block. But the way everything comes together with ink and space and time and using the knowledge and positioning to your advantage and being in the right place at the right time and making sure that you're in the best places in the right time before it actually happens. That's all there is to it. Very kind of the devs to provide us with a backboard to hit when trying to take out a fly fish. Oh, so here's another scenario from Salmon Run, but it's fog. What time is it? Okay. Wow. Ah, I got killed. Okay. So when it's foggy, as you can tell, it's harder to see. Enemies tend to get the drop on you much more easily than you would like. So right here, we're all crowded around our egg basket, which is the place you deposit these delicious eggs in order to get points, in order to pass around, in order to beat the game. What happens here is like, okay, identifying targets. Kill that guy. This guy's a threat. The only way you can kill him is if you shoot the thing on the top of his head with enough damage before he throws it. And I didn't. So then I use this splashdown special, and right when I land, I see this crazy steel eel coming at me. I don't think it's actually coming at me because his head would be turned more. So I swim away from it and go, it is coming after me. So this game also does stealth very well for a shooter. Lots of multiplayer shooters have tried. I don't think they do it very well. Yeah, that's true. Stealth doesn't really work in this horde mode because all the enemies just know where you are. But that's a good point. So on the left is a bomb. It's about to go off, turn the whole area green, off limits. And this guy, again, is a threat, but this is one on the left side. There's also one on the right side. So I do this island hop because if you fall in the water, you die. I do an island hop to get away from the eel and immediately start shooting this guy. Somebody on my left thankfully kills the eel, and see how it blows up in all those pieces? So then I swim straight through that, back through that area because I know that's where my friends were shooting. But then a bomb went off and now it's all green. So then I target the first guy I should have killed, and we kill him together. And when you kill him, your ink gets spread down, so that's a really good way to take control back. And then I remember the first guy is still out there. Because you know why he's still out there? Because if bombs just freaking exploded behind me. You can hear it. And then it almost got me. Here's Marcus and me. And then I'm like, finish you off. And then there's an eel and killed me. So basically, you can use your ears. You can look at the area around you. You can spot with your eyes if it's not too foggy. And you're constantly trying to make the best decision based on all these factors. And sometimes, based on the gun that you have or what's happening around you, you have to abandon what looks to be an easy target to do something that's better long term. Sometimes you have to communicate with your allies in order to do something. It's really what makes this game super replayable and super deep. That was crazy. We're gonna look at it again. This is my friend's Stingray. It's a laser beam you can shoot. Cuts through all enemy defenses. It's great. Kills that guy. So I jump over the enemy ink. Swim back to base. Right here is very important. I jump up over this grate and I see this area is green. So I paint it for my friend. Hey Marcus, shooting the ink for you so you don't have to get stuck in enemy ink. It's little things like that that go a long way to keeping your friends alive. We take that guy out as a team because there's way too many of us right here. Look, all four of us. Breach, Adrian, Marcus, and me. All right here. But look at all the enemies on the other side, and they're not happy. So, identify target. See all those missiles coming up? You can literally see the missiles fly up, go at you, and then crash down. So, That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's at least 7 missiles coming, and you can see the little targets on the ground about to hit me. So I'm like, okay, identify threat. Can't get to those missile launchers, the fly fish, so I'm going to try to take out the steelhead. I got hit with a freaking frying pan. You can see right here, whack. Pushes my aim off. It would have been perfect. Only get 1 shot in, and now I'm in trouble. So I take care of these guys because they're trying to steal their eggs back. And now I'm pinched from both sides. Look at this. Eel in front of me. Scrapper hits me from behind. Immediately paint the wall and go up. I almost got crushed. But then right when I get up, this guy's throwing his freaking exploded head. And then my allies are coming back. I'm like, great, that's good. And another case here. This is a jetpack symbol, which means one of my allies is flying up in the air. But it's surrounded by enemy ink. So I went ahead and shot around it for him. You know why? Because I'm nice. So that was cool. There's an object and a weapon in this game called the roller, and obviously like a paint roller sounds, it's really good at just rolling up paint and cleaning up areas. Oh no! So this is an example of every blotch of ink matters. So I almost get hit by this Maws. It's like the Jaws from the movie, but it just comes up from below and does that and then sinks back into the ground. I see this bomb, I'm like, I'm in trouble because there's obviously enemies behind me. I shoot the wall and immediately try to go up, but the explosion freaking... Where is it? The explosion covers it up. I was like, no! And this tiny little fish right below me kills me, and then a missile comes. Oh, man. Everything matters. Where you decide to jump, what bombs are going off around you, where the ink is. Look how many eels that is. Sometimes you just gotta get out. So this is crazy. If you just want to crowd around your basket and try to get some easy, egg transfers, this is what happens. Enemies from far away start shooting you with missiles and lasers and throwing rain all over you, which is really hard to stop. And then the enemies from close get harder and harder to take out because they're, look, 1 steel eel, 2 steel eel, 3 steel eel. Agreed. And they start wrapping around and they start layering up. So none of the enemies, they don't really hurt each other. They don't have team friendly fire, but there are certain situations where they can affect each other. These eels aren't affected by hardly anything, so they'll swim through each other, they'll wrap around themselves, they'll wrap around you, and this is near, and their little, their body is a curtain of their own ink. You can't walk through it, you can't shoot through it, you can't bomb through it, it's just a wall. So when there's any more than one and they start layering up like this, you are in trouble. So I just get out. Thankfully, this eel wasn't looking at me. They usually pick a target and like stick with that target, even if somebody else gets close afterwards, until like a certain amount of time is up, which is very much like Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass multiplayer battle, in which when phantoms have their target on you, they don't just immediately switch because of proximity. It's like it's a small period of time where they can't switch. I did everything I could. Now I'm dead, and things are exploding, and there's rain, and there's Maws, and I'm this tiny little life raft, and that somebody has to shoot me to get me back alive. And I come back alive, and I put my egg in, almost get crushed by the scrapper. These little green lines on the ground are areas where they're showing rains falling down, so I gotta get out of the rain. I barely get off the side and survive. But yeah, it's just a little sample of how crazy Salmon Run is and why I love Grisco so much. As you can see, I've saved tons of videos of this stuff. Going all the way back to when they first gave us a video ability on Switch. All really good examples, I think. So, I know we're talking about a shooter, and I know that a lot of people like to think that these design elements are isolated to their genre that they're in. But I think all action games can be evaluated in a similar way, and every single action game, almost every single action game, needs to build their core interactivity around your ability to position yourself. So some easy ways to ruin that are having enemies that are faster than you. And if enemies are faster than you, you can't position yourself. There's no way you can gain enough separation to have them, follow in your wake, and then you have enough time to do anything if they're faster. You try to turn, they'll be on you. You try to back up, they'll be on you. I think Horizon had that problem. And if enemies... What else? As you can see in these examples, the enemies can be really simple. Their AI can be really simple. Their movement can be really slow, and that just kind of adds to the pressure. Slowly building pressure is much more dramatic and interesting and manageable and clear feedback-wise and dramatic. I said dramatic. Than just something that happens so fast you don't know what happened and it's over and you're dead and you're already hitting restart. Being able to place your character and move around the environment's important. There's a lot of three-dimensional and verticality happening in Splatoon. You saw me climb a few walls. You saw me jump off of a few things. Glowflies are unusually faster than you. Yeah, there are certain what is it? There are certain game types and scenarios that happen in Salmon Run where the enemies are faster than you, and when they do, it puts the pressure on like big time. Maybe I have a video to show you what he means by glowflies. Just gotta look for some dark footage. Maybe here. But it does. So this roll isn't like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But this rule isn't like apply this 100% to every single case. But it just means when you're building your core, when you're building your foundation that most of your game is going to rely on, you need to make sure it's with respect to these principles, knowing that the emergent quality that you're seeking and the experiential quality that you want will happen if you keep true to these principles. That's the point. So let's look at, is this glowfly? No, these are grillers. Grillers are faster than you. The only way you can juke them is by, like you see here, using three-dimensionality and making them go up ramps and then down ramps. Look at that nice clear feedback, by the way. Just like Resident Evil, the grillers laser target who they're going after. Super important. More griller action. Don't need to see that. What's another dark one? Is this one? More grillers. This one? No. This one? More grillers. I'm always taking pictures of grillers. No. Well, there's nothing. But yeah, so, and then when you're making your mechanics, when you're making, no, my Pro Controller, when you're making your moves, you need to make sure that you don't need to jazz up spatially based attacks and animations and movements. Like, you don't need to make it the most crazy, flamboyant, over-the-top dodge in order to have a good dodge. A good dodge is one that basically works, one where your model has hitboxes and hurtboxes that look like what it's doing, and from there you can just trust that the interactions and the way you interpret the challenge and interpret the space is just accurate. Like, that's more important. There's a 3DS game called Sakura Samurai, and the graphics aren't very good. The attacks aren't flashy at all. The movement is just like a quick little sidestepping teleport forward, back, left, or right. And it's humble, to say the least, as far as its stylistic and animation to go. But yet, I don't think the dodges have invincible frames. The movement is very crisp. The attack hitboxes are very clean, very accurate looking, and then when you really start dodging things by pixels, right, like by just inches, then you know it's because you put yourself in a certain situation based on the fidelity and accuracy of inches. And when you dodged and you got out of the way just by inches, that's because you have control. And a lot of these things are important for letting the player express skill. A lot of these things are important for creating those amazing moments where people feel like they have enough control and understanding of what's happening to truly sort of master the game, instead of, you know, spraying and praying or flailing and hoping for the best, or mashing buttons and trading hits. Like, you don't need to do any of that. So in the future, I'll talk a little bit more about action games. I'll talk a little bit more about this core base. But for the most part, I think a lot about really simply moving games like Pac-Man. How Pac-Man got an amazing gameplay to happen with just up, down, left, and right, and why that's possible. And if your action game, isn't as fun as Pac-Man, and you put in like explosives and bombs and dodge rolls and melee attacks and guns, then it's because you didn't know how to design around the base. I mean, it could be any other number of problems, but as far as core gameplay goes, like, how can Pac-Man do it with just a joystick, and you couldn't do it with all that complexity? I think about mini games and games like Nintendo Land, Animal Crossing Sweet Days, the Mario Chase mini game. And like, all you do is move the analog stick. That's it. Sweet Days, you hit a button to either pick fruit or throw it up or whatever. But the Mario Chase is, I think, just analog stick and dive. Just 2 moves. And yet you have to sort of like navigate the environment and steer around dirt and mud patches and use the 3D to get a good view of what's happening. Use that information to go back down into the trenches. Like, there's so much that happens, and all you do is move the stick. So having an appreciation for these interactions, having appreciation for the small steps that you know will build up to the large steps, is I think the only way you can really, when you're developing a game, give those things enough attention that it actually matters when the game finally comes together, right? Because if you have no one looking at the stuff and you're ignoring it, or you just don't think it's that interesting, and you just really want to get that cool super finishing move animation to work, then your game's just really going to be all about that super cool finishing move animation and spamming it or getting into whatever situation, and not the build up. You're not going to be able to tell a highly detailed story of actions and consequences and how those things stack up and layer over time if you didn't pay attention to any of the moment-to-moment interactions, or the smallest interaction that's meaningful in your game. So whatever, we'll see a lot more of that in the future. That's been today's stream on, you know, the essence of action, or the action core. We'll see how a lot of these ideas and theories pan out later. But you can follow us. Click like on YouTube if you're watching this and you enjoyed this. Follow us on Twitter @DesignOriented. You can also join us in the Discord if you want to actually get in on some of these talks and ask questions and play Splatoon with us, because we do that all the time. It's completely up to you. But until next time, this has been DL Live. I'm Kirby Kid. I'll see you next time.